what people shouldn't include, what you really care about, and what you don't really care about with pitch decks?
Well, it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. They're not all created equal, but some of the things you want to look at is again is the basic things like traction. Do they have any traction? What have they managed to do so far? Who's in the team? Brevity counts. Obviously, not too many words. If it just flows nicely, it's not too much in there. But at the end of the day, you can have the best looking pitch deck and the filthiest business. So you want to make sure that there's something there to work with and that there's some traction. And again, the same points that we repeated here: the traction, the founders, and the idea. And do you have realistic? I don't even like that word realistic, but do you have projections that are rooted in reality based on solid market data? Then you're gonna go a long way that way.
God, pitch decks, yeah. So I think most people probably don't want to do them, not necessarily because they don't like them, but because they're too busy. Like, I get it. I 100% get it. So here's the real reason why pitch decks actually matter. I was literally at a pitch meeting today, pitching Carbon, and we were asked for the pitch decks. That's what happens all the time. In my experience, no one really pitches well if you go slide by slide. It's not dynamic. It doesn't matter how good a speaker you are, how charming, how funny you are. It just won't work out well, so don't do that. But the reason why you still need to construct like a really great graphically oriented pitch deck is because whoever you pitch needs to socialize it within that firm immediately afterward. So if it's an associate, a partner, doesn't matter. They want other people's, if not sign off, buy-in, right? So they need to pass something around, and it's got to tell a good job of like the high-level story. So don't slack on it. Even if you're certain that you're not going to use it to do most of your pitch, you're absolutely right. Congrats, but you still need to do a good job. So I'm probably going to blow it off tonight, but I actually have to finish that deck. And yeah, we're circulating it like beginning next week when we start our raise, and I care quite a bit about that. So there's a formula. If some of you guys are driven and discreet, I'll share a few decks with you. But they all should more or less look the same. You can do your own thing to some extent, but I do think there's a template, and the general gist of it is that you want to tell a good story. So market size, big. That's got to be really big, no matter what it is. Lo and behold, there's a problem, and lo and behold, you're the solution. And then, generally speaking, people insert a few product slides or kind of schematics of the overview, wireframes, whatever you want to call it. And then they dive into team, and then usually the financial terms are they ask, whether we're talking about equity or in the blockchain space, a token sale. And then sometimes, if you really want to go crazy and you think it's that important, include an appendix. But that's the format.
That was good advice, especially for if you're in a pitch meeting, following your story. It can be conversational. It doesn't have to be by slide. The other reason, even before getting into that meeting, that you want to have a good pitch deck is because a lot of times it's actually the first impression somebody can get within you as a founder and the business. So being able to tell a good narrative, putting some effort into design, even if that means hiring a design person, showing that you care about the product and what you're working on is super important. Keeping it simple. The more data, the more visuals help. As far as don'ts, as you mentioned, you want to be realistic. If somebody sees you're going to be making 500 million in 2 years, that sounds great, but it's probably not necessarily true. So being realistic. One thing that I know can turn off some investors on the team side. Sometimes people want to put the number of years of experience across all of the team members. So sometimes it'll be like 200 years of experience, total experience. And it doesn't mean that much at the end of the day. And so just demonstrate that there is some sort of founder market fit, that you had experience in a certain industry is helpful. Maybe what you did before, but besides that, years of experience, just don't worry about it.
And just to add to that, I think we both have something more to say. This is unusually important, believe it or not. Yeah, so for a pitch deck, this is just an opinion. I can't prove this or anything, but I think you want to control your narrative. So if a VC or an investor asks you, send me your pitch deck, don't do it. You don't want to explicitly say no, but if it's not that important, you can usually tell what it is. Just don't, because for the first time they see it, you really want them to focus on you and your story more so than your pitch deck, which is either great or not great. Then after the fact, you circulate it, because again, they do need to socialize it. The other comment is I don't want to give the impression that I'm some sort of like, business graphics like Jesus or something. I'm not. So I'm doing this initial deck, but I'm a wordy person, as you can tell. I'm talking a lot. So the deck is way too wordy. That's fine. We already had our input. The founders did their thing. I'm adding to it. But you mentioned basically you need to involve, like, most likely someone in the design space. I'm actually getting 2 former employees at Giant Media who work elsewhere now. And one of those is a sales coordinator, just does a great job of like taking wordy concepts and communicating them graphically or in infographics in some way. And then the other designer is gonna put together the template. So, it's okay if you don't have that skill set, but it is worth it. Even if like you're lean or low on funds, come out of pocket for this kind of stuff and come out of pocket for legal too. Those things always matter at the end.
And to add to that point, it doesn't have to be that expensive either. You can go on Fiverr, you can go on Upwork, you can find people in your network, you can get it done very, very affordably. Even worst case, you can go on graphicriver.net. It's actually a cool site. They have lots of pre-made templates that you can just fill out, and if that's what you want to do, there's lots of ways to actually do that. Now, to another point, when you're talking market size, I just wanted to add this. It's not necessarily always the biggest market size that becomes the most desirable investment target. Sometimes if you just have a very well-defined target niche where you realistically have a chance of dominating that niche, say with a recurring revenue model, then you have a really interesting business concept that could actually attract some investor interest. And again, everybody doesn't have to be a unicorn. You can get something that's worth 10, 25 million, you're good to go. And again, you just want to make sure that you have a well-defined niche and that you can find your way in the marketplace. You try to compete with the giants, you really are in for, it's not everybody becomes a unicorn. So, but there's lots of smaller businesses that can do very, very well and be very, very lucrative. So that's just what I wanted to add to that.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone have any? You guys want to add anything else to that? I thought those were great.
He's kind of touching on this, but there's definitely many other ways of either raising money or building a company besides, especially venture capital, which again has a specific model. You can build a business that is profitable, healthy. You could, do crowdfunding. You can use something like Heartland. Like, there's a number of different resources. So just figure out what's best fit for you. And it doesn't always, maybe even an ICO. If you guys are ICO or not, but there's just building a healthy business is probably the most important thing. So don't get caught up on like what VCs want or certain investors want to hear.
Yeah, definitely. And to add to that, would you guys, do you guys like when a team is going the bootstrap route, like trying to just make money and hustle and all that? Because you see people do that, and then you see other founders who are literally not doing anything besides just trying to make or raise money.
Bootstrap.
Yeah. Depends on the business. I mean, like, for Giant Media, I'm not shy about my opinions. Sorry, it's just opinions, though. I never claim to, like, it's absolutely true. Yeah, so for Giant Media, we had to make money, I guess, initially because, we were a model that was very service-heavy. We did have a technology product that scaled. We had billions of impressions, all that. But the reality is that, seen as a media company, I was, a young, non-technical founder. And, my CTO was even younger than I was. So we had to work it out for us. And so in the early years, we actually got by me playing blackjack, which is a whole nother story. But eventually we had a white label model where we were able to kind of arbitrage that, and then when we didn't need those partners anymore, we just went around and directly to the brands and the media agencies of record. So in that model, it didn't make sense, frankly, to go after VC funding. So we did eventually have an investor that bought out my CFO, who unfortunately had a medical condition. He's okay now, thankfully. But we just went the whole way, and we had an incredible outcome, and there was no need for a VC. But I will say, though, is like swashbuckling as I was back then, I don't know, maybe it's just getting older, I'm a little conservative and I actually do care a lot about how big the market is. I care about the team first and foremost, but the market almost as much. And the reason why is that as an investor, the hardest I ever worked was this company called War is Boring. They're still around. They got bought by a PE company down in Florida. We worked our asses off. I had to do so much for that company. And in the end, we had a decent sized outcome, maybe 2x, about a year later. But it was actually much harder than that. It was intensely hard. And on the flip side, you know, a company like Ease, extremely high risk, much riskier. A company like Everpedia, you know, gone from 3 million, I guess, when I got involved to over 300 today. It just makes more sense to choose a huge market. And if you're not going to, that's more than fine, more power to you. But then you might be spinning your wheels with angels and certainly with VCs. So really think about it. Don't feel pressured to go after that because you might just find that it's just a bad use of your time.
Good advice. Anything to add? You guys good?
What was the question again?
Well, that was a very long question because we started with pitch decks and then got into a bunch of other stuff. But due to time, I kind of want to open it up now to some Q&A and questions from you guys, if you have any. We have a lot of people in the room, so I'm sure some people have some solid questions. I saw a hand right up here first.
One thing I would mention, I don't know if this is a real talk, but nonetheless, what everybody should do here is also look for, as we said, like-minded individuals and also like-minded corporations or companies.
Sorry. I'll start over. I've owned many different businesses before, and actually now building a crypto business is actually getting bigger and bigger. But what I've learned over the years is not to do it myself. Remember, guys, this is a room filled with a lot of people. You look around, there's a lot of people, and we're here for the same reason. We want to make money, and we want to have a business. We don't want to serve pizza. So it's very simple. At the end of the day, it's simple. Like I said, it's simple, sorry. I like to talk. At the end of the day, there's so many other businesses out there and so many other business partners. Sometimes it's easier to partner up with somebody that's already in business, already going, that's got the drive that you have, because business partners are not easy. You know, you find somebody and they're not like-minded, they're not having the same drive. You can work 24 hours a day and your other partner won't. But as I said, you know, you guys hit the nail on the head with everything else, and my only input would be is that everybody just try to find more like-minded individuals to partner up with. Then the money will start flowing, because they'll be happy to give you money when they have another company that's partnered up with you that has revenue. Make sense?
What was the question?
It's not, it wasn't really a question, I just wanted to, I guess ask if you guys would, ask if you would agree.
We got this guy. Who's next?
My question is, you three men are smart, people in your industry are smart, no matter how much due diligence you do, you love the concepts, you write a check, 60 to 80% of startups fail. So what 3 or 4 reasons do you see that they fail? And then how do those conversations go when they do fail? What red flags emerge? You talk about the red flags. And then how does the exit conversation go where you're done?
I'll keep that brief too. One, distractions, focus, and money management. A lot of times these young founders, they have a great idea, but they're not business people, so they don't know how to manage money, which is why I'm a hardcore believer in bootstrapping, because you really develop and cultivate negotiation skills, managing money, stretching your dollar, and creating something, and then building traction, and that really helps when you now have a bigger budget. So that's one, to answer your question, that's one of the main things that I look at that people do wrong. They don't know how to manage their money. I've seen it up close and personal, and it's when you have to step in or you have a decision to make.
Yeah, I basically agree that I could maybe add some spin, but it's the same thing. I mean, I would just say this, I'll answer it as an investor. To your point, you're absolutely right. About 70%, maybe more in fact, will actually fail. So the way I've made money, or at least feel like I'm on the way to making money with some of those investments as well, is just random luck. And so that's why I'm trying to make bets. No, look, honestly, like, no, blackjack's card counting. That's different. That's actually a skill. That's like one area of life where, like, you know, it looks down on, but I've actually done something. But, well, no, honestly, realistically, if you're doing a good job, and a lot of people will, you're gonna work your ass off, and then you're gonna fail, and it's just the luck of the draw. Just, you know, get back into something, join a company, you know, kind of clean up your wounds and get out there again. But from my perspective, I mean, the biggest companies I'm involved with right now, like they did not look like that in the beginning. Like Everpedia was a bunch of dudes in a cramped apartment in Westwood, didn't want to grow up, very much Peter Pan syndrome. And they had this crazy idea about democratizing Wikipedia, and they were offended that like their DD Reese, which is a cookie shop in Westwood Entry, kept getting taken down. That was the noble cause that like led them to build Everpedia. And then, lo and behold, years later, they asked me for an introduction to Brock Pierce. You know, it was, you know, depending on your perspective, like the king or otherwise of Bitcoin and crypto. And he hooks them up with EOS and they're off to the races. Like I could have never told you like those guys, even though I love those guys and they're brilliant people, these ones would have been the guys that are racing towards $1 billion, but they are. So the truth is from my perspective, I don't pretend to know everything. I just want to meet great people in big markets, and then I hope it comes together. From your perspective, what you all have in common, if you're doing it right, is that you're going to work your ass off, and it's going to be very hard. And hopefully it succeeds. But like you mentioned, the odds are against